The Frank G. Zarb School of Business and WRHU-FM Radio Hofstra University invite you inside the Z-Suite.
I'm Janet Lenihan, Dean of the Frank G. Zarb School of Business at Hofstra University. Welcome to Inside the Z-Suite, featuring current topics and talks with business leaders across every industry. For many professionals accustomed to spending 8 or more hours in a traditional office environment, the COVID-19 pandemic dramatically changed how and where we work. Daily commutes in suits have given way to Zoom meetings in casual business attire. Along with the movement towards environmentally conscious, sustainable business models, hybrid and fully remote employment has become more than an option or a perk to work. It's actually an expectation. In fact, a recent survey of 185 HR executives nationwide reveals that nearly 75% of the organizations surveyed report challenges getting staff to return to the workplace. As a result, about 70% are considering implementing talent strategies to increase on-site work. And yet, there are others who have reversed policy completely and mandated a fully in-person office. Joining us today to discuss our ever-changing work environment is commercial real estate executive and entrepreneur Shegun Holder, Managing Director for First Street Capital and CEO and co-founder of WorkEverywhere, a startup company offering a business-to-business online service for property owners and enterprises to create a future-forward and sustainable work experience. Before his current ventures, Shegun held a senior position with Knotel, the largest competitor to WeWork in New York. He also worked as a senior vice president of asset management in Jamestown, led regional joint venture activities for JP Morgan Asset Management Global Real Estate, and held management positions at Credit Suisse, First Boston, and Anderson LLP. A member of the Real Estate Executive Council, Shegun serves on the boards of the Hudson Square Business Improvement District, Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, Long Island City Partnership, the Community Board 9 Brooklyn, and the Dean's Advisory Board of the Zarb School of Business at Hofstra University, where he was recently honored with the Alumni Achievement Award. Shegun earned an undergraduate degree in accounting from the Zarb School, followed by an MBA from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. Shegun, welcome inside the Z-Suite.
Thank you very much, Janet. Always great to be back as a Hofstra Pride on campus. Always marvelous. Thanks again.
I really want to dig right in because this is so fascinating, and I think everyone listening is going to find this topic truly interesting. As I highlighted in the opening, really what we thought at the time was going to be temporary, this notion of remote work, it's now really has become an expectation, and it has drastically changed our work culture. So I know you are so interested in this, and it's why you are now CEO of WorkEverywhere. Tell us what motivated you to start the company, and really, what's its mission?
The first thing I would say is workplaces, property, and real estate is now just the future of work. The focus is on people. What got me started? Let's go back to the pandemic. My job was basically wealthy individuals would own office buildings, and my job was increasing the value. I did it through leverage, financial engineering, and so on. But no one was in the office. I could not find any way to convince you to go to the office. And then I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she asked this inquisitive question in the middle of that. And her question was, Mom fights for social justice. What do you do? And I said, well, I help increase the values of properties. She says, do you build buildings? No. Do you design buildings? No. It got me thinking about what do I do? My experience is such that I've worked from New York, London, Dallas, Chicago. I've always learned that real estate is much more than the physical building or the numbers. It's about the experience and how you engage people. That same 9-year-old said, I think it's bunk beds and slides. It's about people and having fun in cool places. We did not do bunk beds and slides, but that got us thinking about what is the future of work and how do places enable that future.
So out of the mouths of babes, right, always. But it's fascinating to me because I think what you're saying is that the design of a workspace actually can either add or take away from organizational culture. So talk a little bit about that.
In a sense, we've always treated work as I want to be efficient. I want to solve for something that is slightly better than not good. When we think about products, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, they're solving for the best possible product based on their vision, their strategy. If you think about culture and you want to attract talent, you need to solve for the best culture for the talent you want to attract. And workplace is the way to drive that culture, a significant way. It's also the second largest expenses for companies after salaries and benefits as the largest single check. We felt that flexibility is here to stay. But it's not a conversation, as we've been talking about, return to the office or work from home. We think we need to move workplace experience beyond, both in the office and outside. And so we've been thinking about AI and AR and how can that be used to create these experiences that people find meaning and also memorable. And we think that allows you to attract talent. And in a world where creativity is the most important skill going forward, then you can sort of win by bringing in the right talent with culture. And the most expensive check you write, workplaces, should be a lever to drive that outcome.
Absolutely. I mean, and from an HR perspective, I can tell you, right, talent strategy is key to
Correct.
Organizational success.
Yeah, we use the words, and this is a little bit out there, so we're playing with it still, not HR. We use people and places. The former head of HR is responsible for the people and the places. And when you align your people in delivering the best outcomes, those lead to the culture, that enables you to win. One of the conversations we were part of is that heads of HR have always asked, why don't they automatically grow into the CEO suite? It's usually the CFO and head of marketing. The largest expense is people. The second largest expense is places. But it has not traditionally been the right to win. But if you align the people and places to say why your company will win in a competitive strategy, building that culture that's unique, you now have a chance to say, I am a credible candidate from the perspective of the board to be the CEO. It's ambitious, but we're in a world where everything is changing, and this is one of the theories we're embracing today.
It's actually very fascinating, and it's a little contrary to what we're hearing in terms of, you know, that there's huge vacancies, right, in office buildings. I mean, McKinsey Global Institute actually did an analysis, and they're saying that remote work risks wiping out $800 billion from the value of office buildings, and yet you're saying places matter. And so when you're thinking about this, how can the HR strategist, the CEO, think about, if I really want to motivate my workers to want to come back, not mandate it, but want to come back, because we know we achieve more when we motivate, when you capture their heart, right? Yeah. As opposed to requiring them, employees, to do something. How should they be thinking about the spaces and the places?
The first thing I would say is that every company is going to have a different answer. We've been solving for the two extremes. We've been solving for simple answers. What we want is a situation whereby the teams can iterate towards the best answers for their teams, their people, and their corporate goals. I think that's the key part. I'm going to reference something I just recently read. Phil Kirshner, who's ex-McKinsey, he was talking about there are these 3 cycles of change. We're in this world whereby what was pre-pandemic workplaces clearly declining. Imagine books are still around, but we will use a lot more technology today for information flow. And then there's a middle. And the middle sometimes could be incremental change, the 4-day work week, the mandates, and it doesn't feel transformational. On the other hand, most of us have some feeling about autonomous cars, the fact that AR will be around in our lives. We don't know when, but we know that technology is there. So we agree on where we stand, and we agree on what's at the extreme. The question is, how do we go from today to tomorrow? Too many ideas start with today and incrementally solving a step or 2. We've tried, and we don't have the answers yet, that's why we're a startup, to go from what we imagine tomorrow being, and then how can you sort of step backwards? And then where can we build for that tomorrow? Where we've landed today is experiences are important and relationships matter. Miller Knoll just did a webinar today. And in Miller Knoll's webinar, they talked about the individual having to basically sometimes have focus work and also having the ability to sort of step away, create some space to debrief, some mindfulness moments. And then the teams or the groups being able to sort of have meetings or collaborate. But one of the things that remote work has exposed is that teams need to cross-pollinate. These are weak ties. And so being in the office allows that collaboration. And there's this sense, using their terminology, community, where when we align on what the purpose of the office is, which is much more than collaboration, we start to get people to feel invested in that. I'll give an example. Gilead, and I'm butchering the name, their pharmaceutical company just redid their office. And they said the purpose of this office is that we should have 10 groundbreaking pharmaceuticals or medical devices coming out of this office. And in the book they write about that, we should be a chapter in the book. Office should be a critical element in enabling that future, the way talent would be a critical element. Most people don't think that way. And we need to start having companies go through that process of iterating towards that future. We will not go from today to tomorrow and be like, this is the answer. We will incrementally go there. Companies will go in different directions and end up with answers that are totally different for what they want to be in terms of culture, strategy, and product. I think the one thing I want to underline, property owners in New York are very resilient. If you've been able to deliver property in New York, you've encountered tremendous hurdles and you've overcome it. And that's a muscle that these families and institutions have. The second thing is they know how to deliver hospitality. Property owners own hotels, they own restaurants, they've delivered experiences even in Vegas. And I would not bet against them to look at this challenge once they commit to accepting it and delivering incredible workplace experiences. And so one of the things that we do is we want to partner with these families, these property owners, to enable experiences that companies and people want.
Essentially, I think you're suggesting that the question that so many organizations now are struggling with is actually the wrong question. And that is, do we bring our workers back, right? Are we going to mandate, and so many companies have, are we going to do hybrid? Are we going to say, okay, you had 3 days, now you have to be in the office 4 days? You're saying that's the wrong question. The right question is, how do we create a space that allows them to succeed in what they're doing? What factors go into that?
That's the things we're trying to answer. We know it's an experience. We do believe that flexibility is here to stay. That's the first thing I would say. We do believe that in most cases, the office does not perform very well. And there's a lot of studies about this. You have to enable, again, that focus work, the ability to have some mindfulness moments, which just could be stepping back, the ability to have groups can gather, be agile in how they work together, and then allow those cross-pollination communities. The most important thing we would say is encourage the teams to iterate, bring tools so people can try solving with different iterations. They can try solving in different directions, learn from that feedback. When we think about this question, we go to software production. Mainframes, IBM. We would all gather together and roll out a new software 6 months later. Today, how software is built is agile software development. We're constantly iterating and testing, always iterating and testing. We get things wrong, we learn from what we got wrong, and then we iterate quickly. We don't do these major releases that could be totally wrong 6 months from now and lose a lot of money. The office has to be similar. Obviously, it's physical, so you physically have to build a building, but design it in a way that you can iterate. Make sure design is never final. And I think the last thing that we're really excited about, make sure employees enjoy the experience. You need to attract talent. Make sure they're having fun. In too many cases, we're solving for satisfaction. Solve for something much more. Make it memorable. Make it meaningful. Make it so that how I walk out and go like, wow, It may not be that every day, but aim for it at least.
It's such a great point that you just said, because oftentimes organizations think, having all the free snacks, that's going to be the motivator to get people back in the office. That philosophy fails.
Correct.
But I want to probe a little bit more because I think this is fascinating. So you're saying the workplace of tomorrow needs to be agile, needs to be flexible, needs to be iterative, but it's fixed. So how do you envision that? Is that where, one day I know that I need to be reflective and I need to work really as a solo on this particular task, and so I'm on a different floor that day that's designed differently than the day that I need to be, engaging with others and I'm sitting around on big comfy couches and, shooting basketballs in the basketball hoop and having those conversations? Is it that types of flexibility, or what are you imagining?
First thing I would say is a question that is still being answered. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we're on a university campus. Many different kinds of students come to Hofstra. Many different kinds of students study and engage Hofstra in a different way. They have a shared outcome. They work as individuals. They work as teams. They cross-pollinate across different schools and disciplines. You facilitate their experience, their learning experience, their growing experience. Some is self-directed, some is channeled and programmed. The most important thing is that learning process is so dissimilar, totally unlike elementary school, for example. We want to do that. Imagining a student leaving your campus, they've learned in this incredible way, and then they're giving a cube to sit there, and that's all they can do. And at Hofstra that you've got to create an experience because students have the choice of where they want to go to college, and they choose Hofstra for that experience. And that experience is obviously tied into the reputation, the word of mouth, but the small moments that make that entire experience. You remember my daughter came here, and her magic moment was that you had sushi.
Food always matters.
And that's a joy, right? It was, that's a joy. And the point is, obviously, we're here and we're adults and professionals, but the key part is iterating. As you know, Hofstra is a very dynamic environment. It's always changing. It has to compete. Companies need to treat their workplaces as a tool to compete. And once they align that behind a mission, the culture is a winning culture, I think we'll solve it. Our job is to create a platform that allows companies to iterate, allows them to be very light on their feet and go to the best outcomes. You can say in our vision of the world, I want to open an office in Paris based on certain outcomes. I want to commit to having our corporate culture be consistent. I want to attract certain kinds of talents, and I want to do this experiment for 2 years. And you can do that on our platform. As an individual, I'm going to London. I've been a big fan of football, soccer. Instead of working in WeWork in a Starbucks, can I work in an Arsenal stadium? And my employer gave me that ability. That's what we imagine. Together, it's accessibility, inclusiveness, inspiration, and cost effectiveness. So what we want to do is create a place where people can experiment, play, learn, and win. And if we do that, we provide that value to the individual, to their teams, and to the company.
When you speak, it's just so inspiring. And it really differentiates between satisfiers and motivators, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to get to the place where the actual location, the space that they're working in becomes a motivator for employees. So I have to ask the question because, you read so much about this in the popular press that in New York City, let's take, in our big cities, we'll take New York as an example because we're here, right, so close to New York City, that commercial real estate is in trouble. And in fact, we're seeing office buildings flip to residential, and there'll be more residential housing, and this office spaces are going to become less and less, or the footprint. You're actually thinking the opposite.
I do think that the existing model is changing. And if you don't change, there's a lot of concern. On the other hand, I think we're going through an opportunity whereby as the more innovative property owners change, they will have outsized outcomes. The best example I could think of is, I'm going to use a technology example, so apologies about that. We all had non-smartphones, and some of us were forced to carry BlackBerries. That was half smart.
I had a BlackBerry. I had a pager before a BlackBerry.
Exactly. And then we all ended up with smartphones. We resisted, companies resisted, but then we eventually changed. And we're in a much better place today. I do think that some office buildings will become residential. I think that's a good thing. Housing is a problem in most major cities, especially New York. I think it leads to better community also. I think that if you want a magical experience, the ability to walk to work, to have more other uses around the office building, which could be that helps to build a better experience too. But I do believe, I'm going to use the word magnetic or awesome office, will be an absolute winner. One of the challenges which you highlighted is, how do we finance this? How do we go from today to tomorrow? And office buildings are huge assets. Our vision is taking existing space and starting to sell it as an experience, doing incremental experiments at each building, helping them to build a brand, helping them to build that muscle. And with time, we think that's how we start developing there. So we're not going to go from 0 to 100. 10, 20, 30 is where we're going to be. We will spend less time in the office, and that's a good thing. We want to spend more time living and playing. And if we can do work while living and playing, that's possible. I work in a writer's guild sometimes. I'm not a writer, but being around that energy inspires me. I've worked on an overhang looking at waterfalls in Grenada. I grew up in the Amazon. The idea came from sitting on the banks of the Amazon, doing Zoom calls, and just being surrounded by that made me feel it's possible. I tell this story, if you and I were going to California, San Francisco tomorrow, and I said, do we want to work together? My assumptions were like, yeah, I'll consider it. We're going to a garage. You're probably having reservations, serious doubts. I can find a better place. This is the garage where Google was started. It's 30 plus years old. You're going to show because of the story. And that moment is going to be something you're going to remember. It's never replaces the office, doesn't replace home. It's a compliment. And you're going to do great work because you're inspired. You're a human. You want to connect. You want to connect with stories. You want to connect with places. You want to connect with people.
And it supports, right? You know, for years we talked about work-life balance. And really, I think we've all landed in a spot that says there's no such thing as balance. And trying to achieve that is just unachievable. Yeah. But infusion is really the goal. And so if the space can create a place where we can work, we can play, right? And we can live, that's going to allow us to be our best selves and ultimately produce more successful organizations. So just fascinating. I could talk about this forever with you, but I have to ask you some questions that we ask every guest. Bernard Pivot used to ask questions of all his guests, and they're just rapid-fire questions, and all we want to know is your first answer that comes to mind. So don't overthink it. Just our way to get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. What is your favorite work or household chore?
What I do the most is cooking, part of being an entrepreneur. I've got a very picky customer, my daughter.
I think that's part and parcel of being 9.
Correct. So I want to get better. I do enjoy spending the time with her, getting her feedback, meeting her standards. So I would say that's my favorite today.
What's your least favorite household chore?
Oh, cleaning, mopping, sweeping. But the part of it that's incredible, and is that mindfulness we talked about, is it's a routine that you can sort of do and sort of turn off your brain for a second. But the thoughts rush in at that moment. When you're confused, the thoughts rush in. And there's so much as an entrepreneur that time is something you have to maximize. And you also need to create clarity. And so I use those moments to sort of reflect on things, to step away, and thoughts rush in to help me prioritize on what I need to do. You can sort of go into a stressful moment, or you can do something that's not so pleasant from my perspective, and then you walk away with this gift of clarity or a fresh thought.
And see, that is why you're a successful entrepreneur, because when I'm cleaning, all I'm thinking about is how much I hate cleaning. So, all right, one more question I have for you. If you could trade places with anyone or anything, who or what would it be?
I would say that I'm very comfortable with my life. I feel almost blessed. Hofstra is a big part of my blessing. If I could trade places, there's a famous cricketer, not so famous in America, but famous where I grew up. His name is Clive Lloyd. Clive Lloyd was born and became the captain of the West Indies cricket team, which is the Caribbean, about the time Ghana got independence and when I was born. And he developed the most dominant cricket team for 2 decades. He was someone who was very studious about the game for an athlete, almost looked like a scholar more than an athlete. He was a great leader, but extremely humble. And I think the quality of the leadership skill and humility, even I didn't recognize. I was sitting in a bar in Boston. There were 3 doctors, Indian doctors, and they were talking about Clive Lloyd and his moments of success, his fingerprints throughout the last 4 decades. And to me, that was something that was very appealing. As an entrepreneur, you've got to have a sense of humility, and at the same time, you've got to lead with impact. It's very easy to be tied into just the value or the dollars, but what's the impact? And if you believe you're delivering impact, that will follow.
And I think that actually answers our final question, which is really more for the students in the audience, but what is the key to success? I think you just answered it beautifully, but I don't know if you wanted to add any more to that.
You know, I've always said this. Hofstra students, you graduate with a chip. You believe that you're underrated, you know you can do more, and when you get the opportunity, you work hard, you have great ethics, and you deliver. So that's the first thing I would say, but that's a baseline for anyone at Hofstra, just reminding you that how that exists and your community of Hofstra alum is in the world. The other key of success is deliver impact for people, which I reference, but just focus on that. And if you remember that, get beyond the minutia and focus on how am I delivering big impact for people, and I think you'll win.
Shegun, just absolutely fascinating conversation today. Terrific insights. We are so grateful for your being here and really appreciate you sharing about your company's approach to addressing how we work today and into the future. Thanks also to our show's producer, Adrian Stoller, and WRHU audio engineer, John Mullen, for your support. Be sure to tune in each week on the radio and online to WRHU 88.7 FM, Hofstra University, for a new episode of Inside the Z-Suite, or catch up with our show wherever you enjoy your podcast. For more information about this program and the Zarb School of Business, please visit hofstra.edu/business. Until next time, I'm Janet Linehan from Inside the Z-Suite.